Welcome to the first Eastern Daily Press and Norwich Evening News podcast. Today we are looking at the issue of education in Norfolk. My name is David Powles, Editor Digital for the Edp and the Evening News, and Chair of the debate. Joining me today are Dick Palmer, former City College Principal and currently Group CEO of the 10 Education Group, Rob Anthony, Associate Head of the Hewitt School in Norwich, and Martin George, our Education Correspondent. Morning, gentlemen.
Morning.
Morning.
Good morning.
So, on the facts alone, the picture is gloomy. Last month, Norfolk plunged 20 places in the National League tables to 138th, as the percentage of pupils achieving at least 5 A to C grades, including in English and Maths, in GCSEs or equivalents, dropped from 55% to 54%. Last March, Ofsted launched a one-week blitz of 28 school inspections. In July, it branded the council's support for school improvement ineffective. And in December, it said 20,000 Norfolk children are being educated at primary schools which are not yet good enough. My first question, therefore, is a simple one. Education in Norfolk, is it broken? Dick, let's start with you.
Thanks, David. I think broken's a difficult term, isn't it? Because it suggests that it was mended and then something went wrong and now it doesn't behave in the way that it should. But I think clearly there are, as you described already, David, there are causes for concern, and education in Norfolk is definitely not improving at the same rate as other parts of the country, and that's something that we all need to be aware of and to address. And I think things are happening in the county. There's a lot of good work going on now, but I think historically it's a tough call, because I don't think enough has been done in recent years, and it's only over the very recent past that sufficient change and intervention and momentum has been brought into the system to deliver the sorts of educational opportunities to young people in the county that they deserve. So I wouldn't go as far as, I think broken's the wrong adjective, but does it need more work and does it need further support? Absolutely, yeah.
Okay. Sure. And Rob, would you agree with Dick, or do you think things are better than they might seem, or worse?
I think things are better than they appear on face value, but I think it is important now that we've started to compare Norfolk with the national picture and see what the differences are. And there are a lot of differences, and I think there are substantial reasons why there are differences. But I also think it's right that we are beginning to sit up and take note and do something about it. So I'm involved with the local head teachers associations, and they're all getting together and looking at what we can do about this and how we can strive to improve. I think there always has been that drive to improve, but it's been based on individual schools and individual education institutions. And I think where the difference is now, and where the real power and impact will come, is that education institutions, schools are working together to drive up standards across the system, and that will make the biggest impact.
Okay. Well, we'll come on to some more positives, I guess, later on, because we don't want to make it all doom and gloom. As you guys know, all this week we've been putting the spotlight on education, and Martin, you've obviously been in charge of that. What have you found are the reasons for our struggle? How did we get here?
Well, I think there are a whole range of issues that people talk about when you ask that question, and they go back a long way into history. Things that people mention are a sense perhaps of complacency in the education system, that perhaps Norfolk schools were doing well enough, things weren't too bad, and so things coasted along, whereas perhaps areas like London were vigorously shaking up their system over the past decade. There was a report recently which talked about an old boys club operating in Norfolk among senior leaders. The issue of...
We'll have to come to Dick on that one, I think, in a minute.
Are you suggesting something about my age?
Sorry, I'll leave that to you, Dave. Aspiration comes up a lot. Now, some people get quite angry about this one. They say that our children are ambitious and they do have aspiration. I think an issue that does come across is perhaps some children aren't given the tools to know how to use that aspiration to then go to university, to find good jobs. So that's another focus. Funding comes up. It's a simple fact that Norfolk schools have had less money than many inner city areas for a long time. But again, talking to some head teachers, they say, yes, new funding would be nice, but that isn't the key thing. And then there are a whole host of areas around deprivation and rurality, which people say are historic problems. I think the clear message now from a lot of people, though, is that we cannot accept these excuses anymore. And if someone like London, Birmingham, Manchester can turn things around when they've got analogous problems, why can't Norfolk?
Yeah. Okay. Dick, I'm going to come just to you on that. I mean, obviously, both of you guys have been in Norfolk education for a long, long time. Do you agree with Martin's assessment there? Are there bits that you think are unfair, bits that are missing?
No, I think he's got a lot of it there, Dave, actually. And, having come from London, I have been in Norfolk now for 12 years, I think, but I was in London for 17 years before that. It's really, actually, it's very interesting making a comparison, actually, because, interesting, Martin, your point about lack of aspiration and so on. South London, exactly the same things. You talk to parents there and you talk to the schools there, they use the same thing. I don't think anywhere in the country says it's got good aspiration. You can't use those excuses. I'm one of those really fervent ones on the outside that say, we don't have a lack of aspiration in Norfolk. Every single parents' evening, every event, our open events at the college, young people come with their parents. We never had that in London. I really disagree with the lack of aspiration thing. And I think we've got very bright and able young people. But I think a lot of what Martin's just said is accurate. And I think, there has been a lot of coasting in the system. And I think, there are stakeholders around that haven't taken their accountability far enough, and interventions haven't been made. And as you described, London's a good example, but elsewhere, it shows that other educational institutions have taken interventions much earlier than we have in Norfolk, and that's meant we've fallen behind, because we haven't been as active in taking up some of the innovations and doing some of the things that other areas have done. So, no, I'd agree very much.
On that subject of accountability, I guess, and someone taking responsibility and saying, this is no longer good enough to continue. Where does the responsibility lie? Because is it Norfolk County Council? Is it individual governors? Is it head teachers? Is it MPs? Is it the national government? Rob, what do you think? Who are the people who are going to say, we're the ones who are going to lead this forward and take this by the scruff of the neck and turn it around?
I think you've put your finger on a problem there, because the system now is being fragmented, and we're getting a system where it used to be the responsibility of the local authorities, and it was very clear that it was their responsibility. Now, there is some argument as to whether they took that responsibility seriously enough, and I think they do have questions to answer that. But we've got a system now which is far more fragmented, and when you actually try and point and say, well, who is responsible? Yes, you can say a head teacher is responsible and the governing body is responsible, but beyond then, it then becomes a little bit more confusing. So for some schools it will be the local authority, for some schools it will be academy change, for some schools it will be individual trusts that have that. And I think that is one of the problems that we've got, is the accountability, I think, is not clearer now. I think it's blurred, and I think that's a concern.
I know it's something that me and Martin talk about. I'm 10 years off, 12 years off for having a child who would have to go to high school. And I don't quite know how you make that decision when you see you've got 3 schools and you've got...
Can I take a different view on that?
Of course you can,
because I think it's the solution, not the problem. I think local accountability is absolutely the key. And I do believe in the academisation programme, simply because I think you have to make the individual school accountable for its children. And it's no good having something over here. Yes, I run a chain, but within our institutions, they're individually responsible. And I think governance is a big issue. We've had problems with getting governors in Norfolk for a long time. And in the 10 group, we've spent a lot of resource and effort and time to get really good governors right across our trustees, our directors, our local governors. Because I think, you have to place it with the local institution. I think it does, Rob's right, it does cause confusion in understanding the system, because people are used to an old system, and the parents were used to a system that they went through. But
how do we stop a situation where we have the haves and have-nots then? If you have a fantastic series of 5 schools that come under, say, the 10 group, but then you have other schools that are struggling, it's something that's been talked about a lot. Parents will try to put their children into the positive, what they see as the positive route, and that therefore, it's an ever vicious circle, isn't it? How do we stop the fragmenting of standards?
Okay. and I know Rob will want to come in on this one, but if I can say very briefly, I think, you know, the local autonomy and accountability is really important. But in terms of admissions, don't forget, you know, certainly all of the schools in the 10 group, we follow exactly the same inclusive admissions as anywhere else. It's based on geography. It's not based on ability. It's not based on background or any you know, capability even. It's based on where do you live. So the opportunities for parents should be exactly the same in my view, and that should continue irrespective of the system. I've got no doubt about that. But I think, you know, my argument would be you've got local accountability because you've got semi-independent schools, but collaboration, I agree with Rob totally. Collaboration is the way for collective improvement. And what you don't want is 3 schools amazingly successful over here and 2 schools over there ineffective. Yeah. You know, that doesn't solve anybody's problems.
Rob, do you agree on that?
Yeah, I mean, I think Dick's right about the governance. I think I've been very lucky to work in a school with strong governance, and it does make a big difference. If the governors are challenging the leaders in the school and pushing that makes a big difference. I don't agree with Dick that academisation is necessary to achieve that. I think you can have strong governance without it being an academy model. And I think some of the arguments put forward about academies, when you analyse them, you can't actually see any link between why that particular freedom should drive school improvement. And I'm not convinced by the model. But that's an open debate. And I do think that the collaboration between schools is crucial. And I'm really pleased that Norfolk is addressing that now, because for me, when you look at the models like the London Challenge and the Birmingham Challenge and all those sorts of things, the thing that made the difference was linking schools together and sharing good practice and saying, well, what do you do that works here? And then bringing that into schools. But also the challenge, the ability for one institution to say to another institution, look, we've looked at your data and your maths results are not as strong as they should be. Why don't you go and see them because they're better? And that sort of collaboration really works. And I think for too long, Norfolk as a whole has been fragmented and been seen as individual schools. I mean, Dick and I have worked together a lot on open opportunity and other things, and we've seen the benefits of that collaboration, and I'm really pleased that that's now going Norfolk-wide, that sort of working together.
Just to turn it back into some of the stuff we've looked at this week, and some really interesting stats that we noticed. We found that we did a survey, and we found that respondents were positive about their own school. They gave their own school a rating of 3.6 out of 5, but then they had less confidence more generally in the rest of the system. So primary schools in general were rated 3, secondary schools were rated 2.7. So, I mean, I find those stats really interesting, and it suggests that actually a lot of parents are happy with the education that their children receive. Martin, what do you think we can read in those stats? Are we all getting carried away?
It's an interesting one, that. It's similar to the NHS. People often say that my personal experience is good, but I'm not confident about the overall system. I think there is concern about the overall system, and I think these figures do back that up. It's a reputational issue for Norfolk and for other schools in the area, and that has knock-on effects for teacher recruitment. You know, why would teachers come from elsewhere in the country to Norfolk if we have a bad reputation? So it's an issue, and it's one that simply has to be addressed.
Yeah. Rob, how does it feel to be a teacher? Or an associate head teacher, to be reading some of and hearing some of the negative reports? It must be quite demoralising, because no one doubts that teachers don't work hard, and no one doubts that teachers don't care.
I think that is the one thing that I find particularly difficult at the moment, that whenever you read, and it's not just the evening news, but any media, any description, it's schools are failing to do this, schools are not doing that, schools need to do more of this, and it does feel like you're just being kicked constantly and told how rubbish you are. But when you actually talk to parents at your school, they're very pleased with the education system in that individual institution. And I think that's one of the problems, that there has been nationally this running down of our education system, and we're seeing it a lot in Norfolk at the moment. But actually, on the ground, parents are very happy with it. And we encountered this again when we started working together within Open Opportunity, because local schools always thought that they were brilliant and the school next door was not so good. But when we actually started working with each other, we discovered we were facing the same problems. We had this, and the quality was there in both institutions, and therefore you get this discrepancy between us and them. And that's one of the real
Yeah.
problems.
Okay. Well, we've sort of nearly come to the end of this. So clearly we've not been able to solve all of education's woes in 15 minutes. But just to finish, we'll just go round, and I'd just like to pick one key thing that you think will be done between now and the next 2 years to improve our education system. And I'll start with you, Dick, please.
Yeah, I think collaboration around improving standards around school improvement are critical to the future of Norfolk education. I think we've had a jolt to the system in the last 12 months, and it was a necessary jolt. We needed it, and I think we'll become better for it. I think we will go up the league tables, and I think we'll be in a better place in 2 years' time than we are now.
Okay, Martin?
I'd agree. I think that external shock from Ofsted and the government and the league tables has absolutely shaken the system, and it probably was needed. I think now all parts of the sector, primary schools, secondary schools, academy trust, the council, are much more active and focused on this. And I think this idea that there are now no excuses, and we've seen from other areas that they didn't accept excuses, I think that has to be what goes forward now.
Okay, and finally, Rob?
I agree. I think the collaboration is the key thing. I'm concerned that there may be some knee-jerk reactions which are not so helpful, but I hope that it's the collaboration that wins through in the end, because that's what will make the difference.
Okay, brilliant. Okay, thanks guys for joining us today. That's been very interesting, and thanks for listening at home.